Welcome to Insights in Business. I'm Mary Ruth Snyder, the Executive Director for the Campbell River and District Chamber of Commerce. We are coming to you live on tape from the Rogers Community TV studio here at 500 Rob Ron Road in Campbell River. And the cameras are operated today by a couple of very dedicated volunteers. You will see their names in the credits. And our very special guest today is Kelsi Baine, who joins us from the Upper Island Counselling Society here in Campbell River. Kelsi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Mary Ruth. Thanks for having me.
So, Kelsi, before we dig into what Upper Island Counseling provides for the business community, let's talk about you and how you ended up where you are today. So were you a BC girl or have you come from afar?
I've come from a little further east. I grew up in Brandon, Manitoba, and was there through until I was about 24 after I finished my undergraduate in psychology. So yeah, I studied psychology in Brandon and always knew I wanted to help people and wasn't exactly sure which path to take with a psychology degree. You know, you have to go somewhere with that. So I was looking into social work, and I was looking into psychiatric nursing, and I was looking into a master's in counseling psychology. And I had a professor who encouraged me to apply to the Masters of Counseling Psych program, both at the U of A in Edmonton and also at the U of C in Calgary, and encouraged me to apply for a scholarship through the federal government. And I was actually awarded a SHRC, it was the acronym, a scholarship. The Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada gave me $17,500 so I could go do a master's degree in counseling psychology. So that's how that happened.
So which school did you end up going to?
I went to Calgary.
Oh, to Calgary, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So that was an amazing experience. I really loved my training there and felt like I was certainly on the right path, and I'd chosen the right fit for me.
Okay.
And then towards the end, I met someone who brought me out further west and moved to the island just as I was finishing my degree. So we've been here since 2006.
Oh, wow. So nearly 20 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, do you still have family back in Brandon?
I do.
Okay. And how often do you get home to the Winnipeg area?
Brandon, once a year. Yeah, every summer I take my kids.
How far away is Brandon from Winnipeg?
2 hours straight and flat along the number 1 highway. Yeah,
So
Winnipeg
is it east or
Winnipeg is east. Brandon is west. Only about an hour from the Saskatchewan border.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, how big is Brandon?
Well, it's grown a lot since I left, so I'd say right now it's 50 to 55,000 people.
And how big was it when you were growing up?
More like 40.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, was there any particular aspect of your upbringing that kind of led you on the path? Like, at what point did you go, that's kind of interesting, I'm going to pursue that?
Well, my parents were helpers, so they were both teachers, but my dad shifted from teaching into working as a guidance counselor in the high school. Just always a lot of helping and volunteering, caring about people's well-being was a part of my family. And I really loved my psychology electives in high school. And then when I was 20 years old, as an undergraduate psych student, I was hired to be a counselor, paraprofessional at the local women's shelter, as a safe house for women and children. And that was a very eye-opening experience.
I was just going to say, that must have been a bit of a shock to you.
It was a shock from the, lovely, safe and happy household that I'd grown up in, and suddenly being very much immersed in other people's struggles and trauma and abuse, and working in the field of domestic violence. at a young age, doing a lot of training and learning a lot about domestic violence, about a lot of the Indigenous issues that were happening in and around my community, related to abuse and violence. And so that was hard work, but also, got me started in the process of just sitting and talking with people one-on-one in a counselor role. Even though I didn't have a lot of training, it started the process for sure, and I was pretty hooked.
Now, in some instances, I would think for some individuals being exposed to that at such an early age, and 20 is early, that it actually would have driven them away from counseling, thinking that, oh, this is way too, I can't handle this.
Heavy.
Did you have somebody that supported you through those early years when that first happened for you? To help you stay on that path? Because you must have had somebody that you were able to then turn to and say, this is a lot and I need some help navigating. Like, who was it that supported you through those early years?
Well, I don't really remember being particularly turned off by it.
Okay.
I definitely had a great supportive team. Like my staff that I worked with was very supportive at the shelter, and I learned a lot from other women who'd been there a really long time, and so they were just really able to provide a lot of mentorship. And I was still living at home with supportive parents that I could talk to, and I had a deep appreciation for the confidentiality of the work that I was doing and facing at a young age, and so that was a safe place for support. And I just remember thinking at a young age that, okay, so this stuff is happening in the world, whether I know about it or not, right? So at least if I know about it and I'm exposed to it, I can do my best to try to help and make a difference.
Right.
So I've always preferred to know about it, even though it's upsetting. I want to know your story, so that I can at least try to help. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think it's Mr. Rogers who always said in almost every episode of his, look for the helpers.
Yeah. So that's kind of how it started.
Now, when you were doing your master's in Calgary, was that a 2-year master's, like on location there in Calgary?
Yeah.
And was there any particular avenue of the courses you were in or the studying you were doing that led you specifically to land where you are now?
Not particularly. The course was very, broad. We covered everything. So it wasn't a course where we would specialize. There was one master's that was specific to school counseling.
Yep.
But this was a broad master's in counseling psychology degree. There were definitely, I loved the course in couples counseling, and I still love doing couples counseling today.
Okay.
So I certainly had an affinity for that early on, but it trained us to be able to take that degree into different areas that we wanted to specialize in, or into the type of work that I'm doing now and have been doing here for a long time, which is broad general counseling, because people can come and talk about any issue. So I haven't chosen to narrow my focus or specialization necessarily.
Okay. Now, so you landed on Vancouver Island in 2006. Did you come right to Campbell River at that point?
No, I landed in Langford in Victoria.
Western communities there.
Yes, yep. And spent a short time there and up in Sydney, and then we were here by summer of 2007. We were in Campbell River.
Okay, and what brought you to Campbell River?
We wanted to buy a house.
Okay.
And it wasn't affordable down in Victoria, so we wanted a smaller community, to afford a home and start a family. So
okay.
we came up island and haven't regretted it for a moment and would not consider leaving. So.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, how long before you got here did you land with Upper Island Counseling? Did you create that, or did you walk us through that process?
Yeah, so I guess it was September 1st that we arrived in Campbell River and moved into our new home in 2007, and it was December 1st, 3 months later, that I was hired with Upper Island Counseling. And at that time, I was hired to just run the Port McNeill office. So it was a Thursday, Friday position because we at the time had our main office in Campbell River, but we had a satellite office in Comox and in Port McNeill to serve our membership in the North Island. And so every Thursday morning I would drive up and I would do counseling all day, sleep in a hotel, see clients again all day Friday, and drive home. Did that for a while, and that was my foot in the door with the agency. But it quickly evolved.
Now, in terms of, let's talk about Upper Island Counseling for a second. So how many years has it actually been in existence?
37 and a half, I think. The agency opened in 1987. Should I go into the history?
Yes, please.
Yeah,
please.
I find it really intriguing. So Macmillan Bloedel, a forestry industry that has now changed ownership many times over the years and is now essentially Western Forest Products, I believe. I've got that right. So they created the sort of a grassroots counseling resource with union and management coming together in the 80s because they were concerned about the well-being and safety of employees in forestry.
Wow.
I know. Isn't that something?
That's actually quite shocking to me
that
it was the union and management that came together to create that, because that's not something you hear about regularly.
No, it's unique. But as we know, in dangerous industry environments, if people are dealing with personal stressors, if people are dealing with any life stress, separation and divorce issues, addiction issues, financial stress, and on and on and on, they are distracted on the job, and they are not at their best, and that impacts employee safety, which can lead to accidents or fatalities, and as well as just morale, productivity, on and on and on. The impacts were concerning, so they felt the need to do something, and it was happening down island as well, and a few other places in BC. And our name has changed a couple times over the years. Initially, we were the Campbell River Assessment and Resource Services. And then, so it was started as sort of assess and then refer out to other resources in the community. But then it evolved to be more of an in-house counseling agency, where they started bringing on professional therapists to work in-house, which is what it is now. So we started in forestry, but then just kept evolving. So very soon after, we had the mill, which was huge back then for many years, and didn't close until, I want to guess, 2008. Sorry if I'm wrong. 2008.
You're right.
And the mine has always been one of our member companies, the Myra Falls Mine, and still is today. And then we just expanded from there and continued to bring on more and more community partnerships, so that we can, as an employee and family assistance program, so that we can support all of their employees and their spouses and their kids through this employee benefit, and provide them access to professional counseling therapy services at no charge through our model.
So when you say community partners, you do mean like businesses themselves actually, maybe explain how they become a community partner of Upper Island Counseling.
So we contract with them to provide a service,
Okay.
a package to their company and their employees for mental health and wellness benefits.
And is that based on the number of employees that they have, or is it based on the larger number of like what encompasses all their families? Like how do you determine that package for them?
Yeah, so any company, big or small, can partner with us. Their fees are just based on their employee count.
Okay.
So the bigger your company, you just are paying your annual fees per employee.
Okay.
And the package, the counseling services are eligible to the employee, a spouse or common law spouse, and dependents between the age of 10 and 19 can all access counseling. And then in addition, we provide health and wellness presentations on site at the workplace. So we can go out and do presentations and workshops with our members. We provide critical incident response and debriefing services to all of our members as part of their package. Managerial consultations, so that anyone in management who's dealing with a particularly sensitive or challenging mental health issue that might feel out of their scope and they're not sure how to support the employee, they can reach out and call us and kind of feel that support of having a counselor in their back pocket when they they need additional support. We're there for them to try to support the overall health and wellness of not just the employee but the organization as a whole.
Okay. So let me give you an example. So in the event that there would be a fatality on the job, so would then, if they were a company that had a contract with you, would you then provide counseling services to the immediate family and all of the workers that might be affected by the loss of their coworker? Like, is that how that works?
Yeah, so how that works is we go out and we talk with everybody on site to figure out what's happened and to make a plan as to what is required. Every situation is different following a critical incident or a fatality. And typically what happens is services are of course offered and always available to family of the deceased, and it's their choice if and when they choose to reach out for counseling. We usually set up critical incident debriefing groups with the employees based on who was most closely involved with the accident. So people who were maybe present on the scene, that would be one grouping. People who were maybe at work that day but not involved in the accident itself, that would be a separate grouping because we don't want to mix those groups. So we kind of do debriefing groups based on the psychological proximity to the event. And then we just continue to follow up or see what's needed as time goes on, and remind everyone that if they want to reach out for individual counseling, that we're here for them, and as we always are, but sometimes there's that extra reminder when things like that happen.
And then is there, would there be a follow-up mechanism in place for you to go and make presentation to the company itself, to maybe the management, the union, and also employees in general, just in terms of helping them to move forward and put safety, like, is that mechanism in place for that step?
It's a conversation based on what the company wants, or what they think is needed, how they are sort of monitoring how everyone's doing, if everyone seems to be okay, if they feel like, no, we need you to come back, we could use another group on this, or a conversation or presentation on that. So it's kind of just a very individualized and customized process, based on how they're coping,
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's marvelous that you offer this support. And because one of the things that became very clear as we made our way through the pandemic was how important mental health is across the board for everybody and anybody of any age. And I think prior to the pandemic, there was always a very, sadly, a stigma attached to anybody who was struggling with mental health, whether it be from divorce or job loss or changes in their home life. And people were reticent to reach out. Since the pandemic and since the elevation of general information throughout our society about the importance of mental health, have you in your role seen that stigma fade away to some extent?
Yeah, it's evolving.
Okay.
Yes, it's happening. I wouldn't say it's gone.
Okay.
But I would definitely say it's shifting.
Okay.
And you're absolutely right. The pandemic impacted that. Although we were seeing marked increase in demand for services and counseling starting around 2017, 2018. So it was already going up before the pandemic, and then it kind of hit a pause in 2020 when everybody kind of had to stop and go home, and then it's just been really on the rise since then.
It's funny you say that you noticed an increase in 2017, and I would point south of the border for the reason for that.
Could be. Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is it's not just the pandemic, but there's been so many things in the world that are increasing stress for people, political struggles, a lot of more increased anxiety around things like environmental concern. I mean, there's now, professional development workshops for counselors like me learning about how to support people through environmental anxiety, which wasn't a thing before, but now they have a new name for it.
Right.
Because of so many people's sort of deep concern and feeling of helplessness around and climate change, et cetera. Yeah.
Well, if you just look in the news, literally in the last week, you've got unprecedented floods throughout Brazil that have just, the pictures are shocking, and then tornadoes in Michigan. That just literally uprooted trees as simply as I could pick up that coffee cup.
Yeah.
So when you see those kinds of incidents that are in areas of the world that have never been before, I think everybody's anxiety kind of goes up a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful that you guys are being, that your profession is being offered additional training specifically for climate impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the stressors of life are changing from what they used to be and intensifying, which is just speaking to not only reduced stigma, but also the increased demand for counseling services, and just how our numbers are really going up in terms of people that are reaching out. We used to function for many, many years with 3 counselors on staff. And now we have 4 and a master's student almost full time. So we're pretty much running at 5 and still
not enough.
Busy, full. Yeah.
So we only have a few minutes left. And in the time that's left, I would like to have you explain to us how you survive financially and how the general population and or businesses can help support you financially, because every nonprofit is facing unprecedented changes in terms of rents being raised like astronomically. Like it's just, there's so much pressure on nonprofits financially. So how can the general population and businesses help?
Yeah, thanks. Yes, we are facing challenges to our funding model, which used to work and we could just balance our budget every year. And with increasing costs of living and cost of operating, and increasing need for salaries, because we want to ensure that we are staffing our agency with highly trained and skilled and professional therapists, and that's becoming more and more expensive. So absolutely, our goal, I mean, the reason I work in nonprofit and all of my staff are there is because we believe so deeply in providing professional mental health services in a way that's accessible and affordable for people, because private counseling can be so expensive and challenging for people's budgets, which are already stressed these days with so many rising costs. So the way that we go about doing that is through our employee assistance program. So that's our angle, is we partner with businesses so that more and more people within our community can access counseling at no cost. So the way that Campbell River and surrounding communities through the Comox Valley or up north through Port McNeill, Port Hardy, Gold River can support us is to contract with us so that we provide services to you, and in turn you help us to keep doing what we're doing. And it's very much a win-win sort of symbiotic relationship in that way, that we're providing a service and you're helping to support a local community nonprofit.
It is so important that we are able to keep organizations like yours healthy and sustained. Is there any support from Island Health or any governmental agency, federal or provincial?
No. No.
Do you qualify for any of the grants or extra funding that way?
Well, we've never had to search too hard into that, because we've always just managed as a private nonprofit, with the fees that we bring in for our annual dues from our private contracts. So that's worked, but we're maybe needing to look a little bit deeper into opportunities for grants and start fundraising and different, trying to diversify our revenue as a nonprofit, and look outside the box a little bit. Yeah.
Well, Kelsi, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us today and to share the story of yourself, as well as Upper Island Counselling Society here in Campbell River that services the whole of Strathcona Regional District and Mount Waddington Regional District. And thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And if anybody out there would like to reach out, there will be a graphic at the end of the show that shows all the contact information of how you can reach Upper Island Counselling and visit their website if you need assistance, or if you're a company who would like to arrange that for all of your employees, they would be more than happy to take your phone call. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Insights in Business. Please join us again.